And it's true, you can decide what you're going to believe, how far down the rabbit hole you're going to go. But if you do go, don't look away. Embrace the truth, because there's some powerful stuff going on. If we don't route it out, we're all going to be toppled over by that evil. Now, we're going to get into the Super Bowl and some of the many dangerous aspects of it. But first, let's jam in one more call. JC in Connecticut, thanks for holding.
Hey, how you doing today?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. I wanted to talk really quick about a couple things. First of all, I want to get into the grand simulation thing. It's cool to call it a computer simulation. I believe it's a little more advanced than that, obviously, considering we're taking a tiny, tiny slice of it and then using our most powerful computer to decode it. But as all computers are, they're built on code. Our computers are built on binary. If anyone's interested in the code of the universe, I would look up sacred geometry. But I had one more thing I wanted to get into. Yesterday, something happened on air. Alex started getting really, it started getting to him. I could hear it in his voice, and it got to me, too, because I feel the same way. I could hear all these things, all this information. I'm pretty sure a lot of your listeners have the same thing. It's not his fault. He's not trying to bring anyone down. But that's the nature of the information. This is the only show that gives out the good information, which is great. But I wanted to put something into the awareness of people. I wanted to, if anyone's out there who is into the reason why everything is so depraved and everything is so messed up, there's an article on called "Rise of the Archons," and another one called "Never," and then "Never Call Them Archons." Now, it's really out there. Most people, a lot of your listeners, people ridiculed him on getting into God and Jesus and religion and all that. And you know what? That's great that he believes in the one true God, the one person everyone has to answer to. It's not necessarily religion to believe in someone who has all the answers to the one person where everything was created from. Or not person, so much being. But, I wanted to get that out there. I hate when people start ridiculing God, because I do the same thing with religion. As soon as someone starts talking religion, starts talking God, there's a negative connotation there. And people start thinking, he's into religion and I can't listen to it.
Sure.
But it's not, there is a one true being out there, and everyone's got to answer to him, but everyone is a product of that creation with the same free will that creator has and has given us. So if reading up on the Archons, it's something that even if you ridicule it and don't view it as truth, you are now aware of that possibility.
I appreciate that, caller, and I wasn't necessarily going to get into the whole "are we a computer simulation" aspect today. It's obviously deeply philosophical, but the Bible talks about it being a great test, clearly refers to dimensions. If you don't go for that metaphor, if you want to take it as a metaphor rather than truth, you've got the Matrix. Either way you look at it, we're being deceived, yet the actions we take, the moral stances we take, make a difference in this world. Martin Luther King talked about how the universe tends towards justice. Well, that's only if we stand with our free will, as you mentioned, on principle and turn against the darkness. If we stand down, if we look away, if we don't hold accountable those who've taken the reins of power, they're going to try to tip it towards darkness, annihilation. And really, it's a good segue into the kind of topic we're going to talk about. Jakari Jackson, you've been reading through the news. You've been growing your mind here at the InfoWar. Already a great mind and a great voice when you came here. But it is such a dark and deep rabbit hole. There's so much information, but it reaches a point, doesn't it?
Oh, it definitely does. It definitely does. And before I get into my topic right here, I just want people to know we're following the situation in Tunisia, and I believe it's the article we have pulled up on our screen in here. I believe this gentleman's name is Choki Belaid, was shot dead outside his home on Wednesday morning, throwing the country into confusion and prompting angry protest. That's seems to be one of the things that sparked the recent protest in Tunisia. So just wanted to throw that out there. But yes, what you were saying, Aaron, it's kind of a dark time, and I believe Melissa Melton has already touched on this, and I believe she'll be touching on it again today. Some of the occultism going on at the Super Bowl and other big events, not just the Super Bowl. I'm not blaming, the Baltimore Ravens for, all these Illuminati symbols and whatever else going on. But there is a dark side to sporting events in general, and like so I'm not blaming the sports, institutions. But we have this article out of the Huffington Post Super Bowl is single largest human trafficking incident in U.S., says the Attorney General. Now, this is something that came to my attention a few months ago, and it really bothered me to see that there's such a large gathering for human trafficking, but it's something under the table. We even talked about a little bit when Formula One came here, and I actually have an article about that I'll get to in a second, about how so many people are trafficked at these events. Prostitutes are brought in, some of them underage, and it's this big show in the sportsmanship and all that's well and good, but then you have this underside when the game's over and people go to the hotels, they go wherever, and they interact with these prostitutes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And human trafficking isn't just sexual trafficking; it's debt bondage, indentured servitude, and we'll start off with some sexual bondage, but it's all types of things. I just want to read a little bit from this article. According to Forbes, 10,000 prostitutes were brought to Miami for the Super Bowl in 2010. As of Friday, this is in current times. As of Friday, 5 women were rescued and 8 human trafficking-related arrests were made in New Orleans, according to Fox 8. And that's just the tip. I mean, I have stacks. I originally wasn't even going to talk about this today because I didn't think I could get enough information in time. The problem was I didn't have enough time to read through all these articles. There's just so much information on the topic. And I have this next story from the International Business Times. Sex trafficking at the Super Bowl. Does America's dirtiest secret tarnish the NFL's biggest event? And once again, I'm not blaming the NFL or any of these organizations, but this is definitely something that's going on at these events.
Well, it's a societal thing.
Yeah. And it's all over. It's the NFL. It's in this one is about the NBA. Now, this isn't so much about trafficking at the NBA, but the NBA got to the point they said we need to speak out against this, and they actually went to Greece to demonstrate against it. I mean, it's a huge problem.
Well, look how the Super Bowl brings together kind of the worst aspects of society. I think it's great to be an athlete, being competitive and trying to make yourself as good as you could be. Obviously makes sense. Being on sports teams is fine. But in general, we've got a degraded, slipping away society. We're falling apart at the seams because people are tuning into these sporting events. They're losing touch with what's important, their family, the reasons for the country, the most important institutions, keeping people accountable. It's very much a parallel to Roman history, which was a republic as well for 600 years. Then it was taken over by emperors, and things just went downhill because the population in general, they called it bread and circuses. They'd be paid off with doles of bread, given free stuff, given entertainment, and this allowed them to get into the mindset of buying into gladiatorial sports, celebrating, 2 warriors killing each other just for sport, just for show, bringing in slaves and letting them be slaughtered by a gladiator who himself is a slave but is a highly trained one.
Exactly.
And this is, again, it's not the athletes necessarily. It's that the Super Bowl is the big spectacle. It's where all of television watching culminates in a focus point.
I believe this last one was the most watched event in history, if I saw that.
But look at who attends the Super Bowl. Those are high-priced tickets. These are elite, rich people. Not all rich people bad, of course, but many of them get into these decadent forms of society, using prostitutes. And that's why you have 10,000 prostitutes there, this epidemic of child slavery. And it just goes along with actually the kind of Masonic, satanic, Illuminati type symbolism that we've seen put on display by Madonna, by these other entertainers and artists. This year was Beyonce. People wonder why we talk about celebrities and what they show in their entertainment. Well, it's a big mass ritual, a big spectacle for culture, and it's meant to represent the overall culture of sports watching, television viewing, and it kind of underscores where we're at in society. But get back to the actual human trafficking stuff, because it's a big problem in general in society. And here it is at what everybody perceives to be an innocent event, the Super Bowl. You get your chips, you have some snack foods at home, and you get together with your buddies.
Right.
But there's a lot more to it underneath what people see.
Exactly. And we even have this article here. ESPN, got to a point where they had to talk about it. This was particularly about the World Cup back in 2010. And it said the Johannesburg police estimated that 38,000 children each year were being forced into prostitution in South Africa. Some estimates are that the number is closer to 20,000. But even if it's 20,000, and just in this one area, and that's why they had the World Cup a few years ago. And then this article I was referring to about Austin, few arrests, no minor victims at Formula One sex trafficking operation. And this article goes on to say they arrested 13 prostitutes at the Formula One event just a few months ago. And I mean, it goes on from there. That's just the opening of Pandora's box, so to speak. And I have these FBI crime statistics from back in 2010. And this is human trafficking incident cases open for investigation between January 2008 and 2010. So these are just the incidents that had cases opened on them. Many of these incidents go
vastly unreported. Oh yeah, exactly.
And I mean, it's shocking to me because you see they had a total, and these are just the ones I know about, 2,515 total incidents. They have sex trafficking at over 2,000, labor trafficking over 200, and other types of unknown trafficking.
And you ask yourself why. I mean, prostitution's the oldest business in the world, as they say. Maybe it's not even prostitution itself. Maybe it's this eugenics culture in terms of life has become very cheap, especially in these authoritarian regimes. I mean, again, look at China. They prevented 400,000 births through abortion and family planning. But then when they have girls, well, Chinese society wants a boy because they want someone who can get a job and support them. Right. So the girls become practically worthless in the eyes of many in that society. And that's, you know, these are the kind of vulnerable people who get sucked into the sex trafficking, slavery aspects of things. And who's looking out for them because life has become so cheap.
Yeah, exactly. Like these eugenicists, these people who get on there and they brag and they say, we want to reduce the world population by X number of percent. They don't care if you're one of the people who lives through that. They don't care if you're a prostitute or you're a slave or you're whatever else. I mean, it's a huge problem. It goes way beyond trafficking. That's what we're talking about here today, but it goes way beyond trafficking.
But in Roman terms, the Super Bowl has really devolved into a grand orgy spectacle where the most elite of society get together for, again, this big mass ritual, and they just engage in all kinds of things.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the halftime shows, and I believe Nelson's going to talk about this in a little bit, the halftime shows are just big Illuminati. Whether you believe in that or not, they're just big occultic symbolism. I mean, you can just look at the stuff, and I mean, she'll break it down better than I can, but it's so much symbolism, and it's not, you know, a nice family event anymore. Years past, you know, you could take your kids, and maybe you had enough money to take the neighbor kid down to the football game. You guys all have a good time, and now, I mean, the thing's it's so grandiose. I mean, and it's so absurd, just over the top. Even the halftime shows. I mean, I wouldn't want, if I had a daughter, I wouldn't want her to watch, you know, all the stuff that goes on there.
Yeah, it's just weird and inappropriate for a general audience. But I would also submit the whole deal with symbolism, it is what it is. You can read into the symbolism. There's different interpretations of the meaning. But mainly, it's a hidden language meant for those who have, as the Bible says, eyes to see, ears to hear. If you don't know what you're looking at, how is that affecting your subconscious? I mean, what if Madonna or Beyonce got on stage and started speaking Greek to an English-speaking audience or speaking Arabic? You would wonder what they're trying to say in a hidden, coded fashion. Why are they talking in a language that's not understood by people?
Exactly.
That's one of the ways we need to look at these hidden languages. But again, it's just, it becomes an excuse for people who are already decadent to go all out. And they did this in Roman society during what we know today as the Christmas time. Then it was Saturnalia festival. And in my view, it's very tied to satanic practices where they would just encourage this kind of running wild, running rampant, and just evolving more and more into this bread and circuses mentality. And again, you give up your right to control your own life, to control society, and to hold any of your leaders even remotely accountable when you give into this kind of behavior as a general society. I'm not judging anyone in particular for the things they're getting involved in.
Yeah.
But clearly, this is abusive stuff. It's horrible to women, and we'd like to rein it in. It's such a hidden problem, though.
It is.
As you mentioned, it goes underreported.
It's the white slavery, as it's called, and it's not slavery of white people. It's this sex slavery. It's this this indentured servitude. This we own you kind of aspect, and it's way beyond the U.S. It's way beyond just women. I mean, there's children. I mean, to a much lower extent, even men get sucked into this, adult males, but, you know, surely large amounts of women. I actually have this next article here. Human trafficking to UK rising. And this says, last year, the authorities learned of 946 victims compared to 710 in 2010. The report said that 712 adult victims and 234 child victims were reported last year to the National referral mechanism. And I actually have this graph here. If you get a shot of this, and you can see the countries where these people are coming from. You see Nigeria in the lead, Vietnam, Romania, and the list goes down from there. And it says that the top 10 countries account for 64% of all referrals.
And again, Nigeria, a country with a high birth rate. So they've told us in the eugenics mentality, those are worthless people. Don't worry about them. Who cares what happens to them? We just need less of them. That is a disgusting mentality. And Alex has talked about this. I don't have the articles in front of me because I wasn't prepared to talk about this. But DynCorp, the military contractor, got caught trafficking human slaves, sex slaves. The United Nations has been part of this. And the United Nations in Africa just lets these dictators slaughter their own people, encourages these factionalized wars, and disarms populations to keep them from being able to resist and institute kind of a normal society, while they look the other way to these mass epidemics, the systematic abuse of sex, slavery, human trafficking, you name it. And in the case of DynCorp, they were caught, you know, as in the system knew about it. They were investigated. There were hearings in Congress even, but basically it was at most a slap on the wrist. They got some fines. The system looks the other way because they, at the top, the most elite people want to engage in this. They're blackmailed into going along with it, and it becomes epidemic with these illegitimate systems of government that have taken us over. Look at the climate change hearings, again, on behalf of the United Nations. They had them, I think the Copenhagen hearing, they had the largest influx at that time of known prostitutes. And
right.
Of course, there's an underbelly again to that.
Alex Jones here with a message that could revolutionize health in this country. Going back about a year and a half ago, I began to learn about the incredible health effects of longevity products. Aaron Dykes lost 92 pounds. We're going to show you some before and afters. Aaron, break down what happened, your story.
I've worked really hard with diet and exercise to try to lose weight, but I just didn't get the results. It just didn't happen. Then I saw what you were doing with InfoWarsTeam.com. I wasn't even trying to lose weight, but I got it because I wanted to feel better energy. I wanted that nutrition. Didn't even understand how that could kickstart my own weight loss goals. But the products did that for me. I found myself suddenly losing weight, more energetic, wanting to exercise, wanting to eat the right foods.
And they don't even advertise it as weight loss. I want to challenge our radio listeners to go to InfoWarsTeam.com, sign up as a distributor, and get wholesale pricing discounts at InfoWarsTeam.com.
Jakari Jackson, we're coming to the end of the hour. We've got other reporters coming in with different topics, but finish up on the dark side of the Super Bowl, the sex trafficking, slavery issue nobody wants to talk about.
Right. And it's not just the Super Bowl. I mean, it's all over. It's in various aspects of entertainment, not just sports. I mean, it's all over. And I mean, it's a big deal, and I don't want to limit it just to that. But in my closing remarks, I want to bring up some of these remarks that various officials have made concerning just things such as rape and trafficking and such as that. And I have this article right here. U.S. judge says victims' bodies can prevent rape. Yes, it is as absurd as he said it. A Southern California judge is being publicly admonished for saying rape victims didn't put up a fight during her assault. The California Commission on Judicial Performance voted 10-0 to impose a public admonishment Thursday, saying Supreme Court Judge Derek Johnson's comments were inappropriate and a breach of judicial ethics.
Blame the victim mentality.
Yeah, that's what it is, and that's the same thing with these elitists, these globalists. You know, if you're a sex slave because you didn't put up enough of a fight to get out of that. You know, and that's the mentality of many of these people. But I'll move quick to our next one. Richard Graham. UK lawmakers' rape remarks draw condemnation. A British lawmaker's suggestion that young women who wear high heels and short skirts put themselves at greater risk of rape has drawn widespread condemnation. If you are blind drunk, these are his words, if you are blind drunk and wearing those clothes, how able are you to get away? How are you able to get away? He said to a group of people. And my last one right here, corrupt judge exonerates 13 child sex slave traders and ignores 130 witnesses as liars. In an unprecedented case with hundreds of witnesses, a group of judges allowed 13 accused sex slave traders to walk and believe their testimony that the victims were liars. So that's the mentality. I mean, you go to the courts to get your justice. You have 130 witnesses, and now they're liars.
It's incredible.
You
and
know,
again,
it's the same thing with, Sandusky. You know, they were reporting, I think so, I have an article for that they were reporting him as a pedophile. Yeah, here it is right here. Sandusky labeled likely pedophile in 1998 report. So they knew way back then that this guy was at least suspect. I mean, maybe they didn't have any concrete evidence, but going back to 1998, they had, reason to suspect this guy was up to something.
Yeah, and again, of course, everyone's entitled to their defense, but he's now been convicted. It's proven. But the first thing they did was try to discredit the witnesses and say that was a long time ago. You don't remember other reasons. They were supposedly their own fault for being caught up in this stuff.
Right.
When it was systematic, it was across the board. It was institutionalized there at Penn State, other places around the country.
Mm-hmm. And that's just the way these people operate.
It's really troubling stuff. You want to take a call here?
Sure.
Okay, we've got Paul in New Jersey. He wants to talk about guns. Thanks for holding.
Oh, guns and everything else. I mean, I'm just going to say a couple things. The UN. I mean, Al-Qaeda is a terrorist organization for the UN. NATO is the military arm of the UN, and we're paying for it all. And you pay your income tax, where does it go? It goes to the IMF, International Monetary Fund. So we're paying for our own destruction.
Isn't that the truth? I'd like to do a segment in the future on the IMF and how they hold these countries hostage. They give them loans, hold them on strings, and then they impose the kind of New World Order corporatist system they want. We're coming up to the end of the hour. Appreciate you, Jakari Jackson. We'll see you in the near future, see what you're working on. We got David Ortiz, Melissa Melton ahead. InfoWars Nightly News tonight. Stay tuned. A lot of powerful information still ahead. David Ortiz, you are at the helm now, so tell us what kind of things are on your mind. What have you seen in the news cycle here lately?
Well, there's a lot of good news going on as well, so I want to focus a little bit on some of the good news. And one of the good news is Senator Rand Paul is reintroducing his Audit the Fed bill. Obviously, last year, that passed overwhelmingly. It was Dr. Ron Paul's bill, and it passed in the House 327 to 98 overwhelmingly, and then it made its way to the Senate, and only 37 senators signed it, but it didn't make the floor. Had it made the floor, a lot more senators would have supported it. So just so you know, last year when it was introduced, Nancy Pelosi was quoted as saying, "I don't know that Congress and the public should be having a political impact on monetary policy. The central banks in all countries have these responsibilities. If the thought is we're politicizing monetary policy, I don't think that's a good idea."
And of course, the Constitution authorizes Congress to control the currency, and it doesn't make sense for a private corporation, a private bank to issue and control the currency, especially when they're using it clearly to engage in economic warfare excuse me. But of course, Ron Paul and the others who joined him finally, after tireless decades of pushing for the issue, finally got just a partial, minuscule, puny, kind of on the surface audit of the Federal Reserve, and they found all kinds of misappropriations, giving billions to banks, giving billions to overseas foreign banks of taxpayer money, parking it at the Federal Reserve, giving them interest-free loans while allowing them to gain interest by just parking their money, not loaning it out to small businesses, not using it to revive America. Imagine how much more devastating information we'll find through a full audit. And again, this is an important time because this is the year 2013. Hard to believe. 100 years ago, 1913, is when they passed the act that created the Federal Reserve System, of course, in the dead of night on Christmas Eve, when most of the Congress had already been dismissed and went home for the holidays. They snuck it in, a sabotage against America, because they know that the power to issue currency is the power to destroy. Rothschild said he doesn't care who has an army, who has political force. Just let him. He doesn't care who makes the laws. Just let him manipulate the currency. David Ortiz.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have on record Bernanke saying, we should print some more. They're almost at the end of their rope there, but he's willing to print some more, and they're devaluing our currency. I think inflation just over the last year has been about 10%. So the good news is that this bill is being reintroduced, and now 4 people who were in the House last year who supported this bill are now senators. So there's a much better chance. Obama has stated, President Obama, that he will not vote for it. But you know, if this keeps on passing in both chambers, he's going to have a lot of egg on his face if he doesn't ultimately approve this. So even if it passes the Senate and the House this go around and Obama votes it down, he could only do that for so long before the American people demand that he pass it. So let's wish Senator Rand Paul luck on that.
Yeah, even the worst of politicians can be politically shamed into going along with something that's actually good for people. I was just pulling up on Google Images the purchasing power of the U.S. dollar since 1774. That, of course, is right around the start of the American Revolution, the founding of the country. And you can see there were definitely ups and downs. There were spikes, but it remained relatively high. Then you come to the early 1900s. It's almost a straight graph down, 45-degree angle to where we are in the present day, less than 5% of the original value of the dollar. That will come up more ahead, but we need to talk more about the reauthorization of the Federal Reserve Charter, or rather the stopping of the Federal Reserve, we can hope. This is the InfoWar, ladies and gentlemen. Engage your minds, open up to the larger reality, and start to take back your life. There's that old saying that the best revenge is living well. The best way, actually, to defeat this tyranny is to take back the power of your life into your own hands. I believe we need to decentralize the power that they've concentrated in Washington, D.C., the spheres of Wall Street, and the larger IMF, United Nations, Bank of International Settlements, World Bank system that they're erecting to spread worldwide tyranny. But if we just educate ourselves, tell others, of course, but change your own life, that's the best way we can do it. But of course, we're part of a nation, we're part of a country, and currency, again, we just blasted into it in the first short segment. Now we have a long segment. David Ortiz, one of our InfoWars nightly reporters here, currency is one of the most powerful mechanisms of control there is. There's political power, there's military power. People like Rothschild said they're not so concerned about that as long as they can control the currency. And we know that in the early days of colonial America leading up to 1776, they had what was known as colonial script. They issued their own currency, and they had a vivacious, lively economy there. And I think it was Ben Franklin who talked about how when they destroyed their ability to issue their own colonial script, that was the beginning of the end. That was perhaps the real trigger towards revolution. There were many factors: the taxation, the abuses of civil liberties and rights, the attempt to disarm the colonists. But one of the most important was that currency thing. And we're seeing these issues crop up again as people become educated about the Federal Reserve. And again, this is the 100-year anniversary of the tyrannical parasite, the Federal Reserve, who have changed our system of currency, moved it away from gold and silver, moved it away from a controlled, based on the population, fiat currency, which could work in theory, and just made it a weapon of all-out economic sabotage. David Ortiz, please get back into some of these issues.
Well, absolutely. I mean, as you were saying, you know, our currency is being devalued. I said earlier in the segment it's about 10% inflation annually, according to many independent studies. And it seems that many states are taking action as a result of this. Last year, 13 states presented bills to create their own currency, or to, at the very least, create a committee that would review the matter. And, you know, it moved further along depending on each state. Wyoming, I believe, either Wyoming or Washington, narrowly it was voted down, but they almost created their own currency in one of those two states. But it seems now that lawmakers in Virginia say they want to keep their options open in case the value of the U.S. dollar ever collapses. So they're considering minting state coinage. The bill passed in their House in Virginia to create a committee to see if they will honor gold and silver as legal tender. So if it's already passed the Virginia House, if it goes to the Virginia Senate and passes, a committee will be created to see if they could use gold and silver as a legal currency. And that's already being done in Utah.
And of course, they're trying to convince us that using gold and silver is a new form of terrorism and it's going to undermine the economy. No, it's been the Federal Reserve debasing the value of our money and using it as an insider trading weapon where they can give, again, these zero interest loans to the bankers on Wall Street, the big bankers, the Rothschild, Rockefeller factions, while the little people have to pay huge inflation, huge prices for their money. You know, if they get it on a credit card, it's upwards of 20-30% in many cases. But whereas many local cities do issue their own currency, they have coupon systems, and it's revitalized a lot of failing cities across the country, even in the modern day. So why not look at those kind of systems? I think it's encouraging that states like Virginia are looking at that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at last count, it was about 20 communities throughout the United States had their own currency. And it really helps the unemployed, low-income people, because now their currency has value, you know? So it's good to see that Virginia is doing this. Last year, 13 states reviewed this issue. Utah has passed a bill, as I stated earlier, to, you know, honor gold and silver. People are using it, so we wish the state of Virginia well.
Look, economic viability is one of our inherent rights. We have a right to our own lives and to try to prosper. I mean, that's basic to the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And they want us to be economic slaves to this system, to be told what to do out of Washington and on Wall Street. And it's just so backwards. I mean, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Like we stated earlier about Rand Paul's audit the Fed bill that's being reintroduced. One of the reasons why the powers that be don't want that bill passed is because once a light is shined on the Federal Reserve, it will send international markets into a frenzy. It's not so much because, you know, they want to honor what the Federal Reserve does. They really want to cover for the Federal Reserve, you know. So, you know, it's good to see that states are taking action. Now, in other important news in terms of victories, because the Liberty Movement is also experiencing a lot of victories. In Washington State, they're preparing to take on the TSA. There's an article posted on Infowars.com where Representative Jason Overstreet is introducing a bill called HB 1454, and it basically says that if the TSA abuses their power, if they take a child away from a parent without the parent's consent and they frisk the child and the parent doesn't like that, they're going to rule it a Class C felony. Now, I don't know what a Class C felony is, but clearly there's going to be a penalty for it.
Well, even a Class B or Class A misdemeanor could be some pretty serious jail time.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's good to see that the state of Washington is really repudiating the TSA, and they're introducing a bill as well to really, you know, put the TSA on their toes.
But again, we've been conditioned since 9/11 in the war on terror to just accept these top-down controls when they're abusive and make no sense, but they want to engage us in a semantical debate. It's like I was talking with David Knight earlier about the drone situation and about torture. They want to argue over the definition of waterboarding versus torture. I mean, the stuff they do at a TSA checkpoint is a form of harassment and torture. I mean, why do they have to touch people's genitals into pants, harass old people and children especially? Notice they're the most vulnerable sectors of society on either end of the spectrum. Why do we have to be stopped and frisked and checked just to travel when we have a right to travel? And it, again and again, anytime there is an incident of terrorism, it just links back to the shadow government and to those in Washington who have an agenda for controlling us.
Absolutely. These agencies just continue to grow and grow. The TSA is about $8 billion a year agency. They have not caught one terrorist. It's not a good return on investment.
Tell them again.
$8 billion a year, the TSA agency. That's how much it costs the taxpayers. And they haven't caught one terrorist. It's not a very...
But you get a lot of lip from people in a uniform who think it makes them important.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But, you know, it's good to see that, you know, people are wising up to this.
But, you know, I've only, since I've been here at InfoWars, started to re-recognize states' rights and the importance of the 10th Amendment. But we've had a great awakening over several issues just in the last year or two, thanks to people like Drudge Report covering the TSA issue, thanks to states like Texas overwhelmingly, unanimously passing in the House that they wanted to try to throw out the TSA. But then again, we're told by the feds, you can't do that. We'll tell you what to do. We're the parent. We're the child. Obama is our daddy. Did you see that clip yesterday?
Yeah, when I thought about that, I just thought, you know, we should all just close our eyes and envision Obama picking us up and spinning us in a circle.
Oh, he could hug us like little children, like Joseph Stalin or Fidel Castro or all the other dictators around the world who pose for these poster images with children. Hitler went to many photo ops with children.
Yeah, it's not very loving. The NDAA is not very loving. Drone attacks are not very loving. A top-down approach is not very loving. But just speaking of Obama and the federal government, I was making this point earlier with another reporter that the economy, any revitalization that is taking place in the economy, Obama's getting credit for it, but in reality, it's because states are nullifying a lot of what he does. They're nullifying right to work. They're nullifying Obamacare. So he's actually getting credit for some of the improvements in the economy when, in fact, it's the states taking the matters into their own hand, abolishing state income taxes, things of that nature. And here you got Obama posing as the hero when, in fact, the states should be commended for the revitalization of the economy, the little revitalization.
Look at the biggest spike in sales of the whole year. It's in guns. That's because Obama's been trying to attack and rescind Second Amendment rights. It's because states have stood up and introduced Firearms Protections Act, because sheriffs have stood up and said no, and because the people have stood up and said, we see the value in self-defense and arming ourselves and having you not tell us what to do and control our lives. The TSA issue, again, $8 billion spent through federal tax money, sucked out of the people. Not one terrorist caught, lots of harassment of the people, but also it's been economically devastating. They admit tens of billions of dollars in travel money, in hotel money, in leisure spending is all drying up because people don't want to travel and put up with that harassment.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They've had major industry reps meet with the TSA, Pistole and Napolitano, Chertoff, you name it, to say, can you please just back off? Can you please not now harass pilots after harassing regular passengers? Because we want people to travel. We're in bed with the travel industry. You know, we've got Travelocity packages with flights and hotels and rental cars. We want people to keep doing that and to have vacation time and money to spend. Can you stop harassing people and destroying a large sector of the economy?
Absolutely. And some airports, from what I understand now, do have the option to opt out and to have their own private, security force. Sacramento just backed out. I don't know why.
They did that in Orlando, right?
Right.
And again, major tourist town, Disneyland's there.
Right. But what they don't say is that even if you get your own private security force to, do security at airports, the TSA still oversees them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so, it's good to see that, that states are taking, the initiative. But, yeah, the TSA is absolutely growing out of control. And speaking of states' rights, because we were talking about states' rights earlier, it seems that the gun issue, many states are nullifying the assault weapons ban. But sadly, Maryland is, they look like they're going to pass an assault weapons ban. So, the victory is really on the state level.
Well, that's why we have to be vigilant. We'll get more into this discussion on the other side. Other reporters, Melissa Melton coming up. InfoWars Nightly News tonight. Stay tuned. Infowars.com. Let's educate ourselves and turn things around. Take back our lives. Come on, people. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking about, of course, rights-based issues, TSA and the Fourth Amendment, guns and the Second Amendment, how they want an assault weapon ban. But it's also, as we discussed in the last segment, economic in every instance. Again, you look at the pattern of history repeating itself. Look back to the American Revolution. They talked about how they were eating out their substance. They had to fight back against the British because of these long train of abuses. Their rights were directly connected with their ability to conduct themselves in a viable way economically, and that's what drove them in many respects to fight for that. There were other agendas at work as well. But David Ortiz, you've been highlighting on a number of these issues. Now, we just mentioned at the last break there's an attempt at assault weapons ban in Maryland, but there's more.
Yeah, absolutely. In Maryland and in Colorado, it turns out that they're really having a heated debate in Maryland. Governor O'Malley, a Democrat, he's proposing a bill which would add Maryland to the 11 states that require residents to apply for and receive a license before purchasing a handgun. Now, he's targeting assault weapons as well, which I'll talk about in a second. But do you see how this is incremental? The argument was assault weapons, and now they're saying in Maryland they want a bill that says you're going to need a license to get a handgun. It's all incremental.
Well, they take one tragedy they could seize upon, one gun, the AR-15 they can exploit and play up, even though it's admitted the Sandy Hook shooter never used an AR-15. He supposedly had one in his car. Who knows if it was planted there? And yet they want to demonize all guns. And you were talking about how they want to hold gun manufacturers legally responsible for any damage done. Well, look at those hypocrites who conducted Fast and Furious. Will Eric Holder have to hold out a personal bond for the tens of thousands killed by drug cartels, armed by our own government, encouraged by the CIA to carry out a black ops war against the people? Will he be held liable for the damage to Border Patrol agent Brian Terry and the dozens of others who've been killed, the Mexican beauty queen, the upset to the economy in Mexico and in the United States?
Absolutely not. I mean, how it works is when a government official kills someone, it's collateral damage. When the American people kill someone, they need to be controlled. They're bad.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Yeah. So, no. Yeah, Fast and Furious, it just goes on and on. All those children that were killed at a party in Mexico as a result of Fast and Furious.
Oh, but those children don't count because we're not supposed to talk about, we're supposed to talk about the Sandy Hook children.
Yeah, absolutely. Obama won't shed a tear for those Mexican children. So, yeah, when a government official kills someone, it's collateral damage. We shouldn't pay attention to that. But in terms of Colorado, you were talking about Colorado. Let me talk about Maryland real quick. Aside from purchasing a handgun and needing a license in the Maryland bill, his legislation in Maryland would also limit the magazine capacity from 20 to 10 rounds, and you need to pay a $100 fee as well. And Maryland Republicans have compared the bill's $100 fee and heightened training requirements to poll taxes imposed in many southern states during the Jim Crow era, which were often designed to discourage participation by poor black citizens. So more registration, and also if you're poor, you got to fork over $100 as well.
And they tried this under the original gun control in the United States in the 30s. That original gun control, they tried to make people pay registration fees. That was hundreds of dollars, and that was taken to the Supreme Court. A lot of it was struck back, but parts of it that weren't rescinded were based on that somehow they have the right to just tax us even against our own rights. We see the same thing with Obamacare as well, just by the way.
Yeah, and this works. These restrictions work. They sound reasonable, but very few people in New Jersey have a gun now. Very few people conceal carry because they got to pay a fee. They got to go through so much training. So this stuff actually works. So it does infringe upon our Second Amendment rights.
It works at disarming victims and letting criminals run wild.
Absolutely. While Dianne Feinstein, she carries a concealed carry. And you were also mentioning earlier Colorado. What they're going to do in Colorado is if they can't pass an assault weapons ban straight out, they're going to circumvent, and Colorado bill would hold gun makers and sellers accountable for weapon violence. If the bill becomes law, owners of semi-automatic rifles would face strict liability for civil damages caused by their types of weapons, while state statutes that safeguard manufacturers and dealers from such liability would be abolished. So basically, if you're a manufacturer and someone has your gun and there's a massacre, you're going to have to get liability insurance.
And none of this happens in a vacuum. We've seen these liberal journalists in various magazines. I don't want to misquote the magazine. I have one in mind. But they wrote about how you should have a license to get a gun, how you should have to take out personal insurance if you're going to own a weapon. And they say, well, we should rewrite the Constitution. We should rewrite the bill. The Second Amendment. We should say, oh, you do have a right to a weapon unless Congress or the president decides otherwise. That's not a right. That is tyranny. That's arbitrary power. And it's turning our rights into a privilege. Thank you, David Ortiz. We'll hear more from you in your special reports. Now, on the backs of all the stuff we've heard about genetically modified foods, its linkage to organ damage, tumors, cancer, and especially digestive issues. We have the story up at Infowars.com. Safety group blows lid on secret virus hidden in GMO crops, and it just is further evidence that this stuff is inducing gene mutations and really just wrecking all species up and down the food chain. At the same time, we have this news out of the New American. The GMO giant Monsanto joins Big Business Coalition for United Nations 21. Well, of course, Agenda 21 was always about using so-called seed technology to feed a hungry world, when at the same time it's really about centralized control and eating out your substance. Look at what they did in Iraq. It wasn't just a war against the people. It wasn't just a war for territory. Remember the 100 orders from Iraq that Paul Bremer, not to be confused with John Brennan, introduced? One of them had to do with GMO seeds. They took over all the seeds and mandated that only Monsanto and other biotech seeds could be planted. Oh, but after a year or more of pushing for Prop 37, people demanding to know what's in their food so they can avoid GMOs, pushing for labeling laws, they are moving with this false solution. You've got the big agri industry and the GMO industry now pushing for their own federal compromise on GMO labeling that they say could trump state law forever. You've got representatives of Walmart, General Mills, Pepsi, Frito-Lay, Mars, Coca-Cola, and others meeting with the FDA on January 11th for mandatory federal GMO labeling, and they say this is the concept of preemption. They want to preempt what states and local areas can do so that they can create their own loopholes, continue to do business as they like to operate while giving the public some assurance that something's being done about these very dangerous, very devastating GMO technologies. Now I'm going to shift gears completely into another subject. We're joined by our reporter, Melissa Melton. She did this special report on the Super Bowl and the Illuminati messages displayed during that weird Pinnacle halftime ritual show. Let's go to that piece right now.
I'm Melissa Melton reporting for InfoWars Nightly News. The day after the Super Bowl, the top story on Yahoo.com was, did Beyonce flash an Illuminati sign? Next to a picture of Beyonce making a pyramid hand symbol, the article goes on to say, according to legend, the Illuminati are a tiny super secret cabal of influential individuals who have shaped the course of world events. So it makes perfect sense that Beyonce would flash their triangle sign to one of the largest viewing audiences in human history. What better way to preserve a secret? That's a definite possibility. Founded by Bavarian professor of law Adam Weishaupt in 1776, the Illuminati is considered the most notorious secret society, a sect bent on manipulating reality and dominating through a world government. These so-called illuminated ones have been referred to by some as Satan's elite, whom they worship. Their symbol is a pyramid to illustrate the idea of a top-down societal control system, and the pyramid features an all-seeing eye, or the Eye of Lucifer. InfoWars has reported extensively on the history of the Illuminati, their birthplace, their prevalence in popular culture, music, movies, and their intent to dominate the world. While the article's language seems to sarcastically play off Beyonce's hand gesture as no big deal, this isn't the first time we've seen questionable symbolism at the Super Bowl.
Look at these screenshots we've got from last night's Super Bowl performance by Madonna, and then you can also Google image search for yourself and type in Baphomet. And of course, we see that Madonna is dressed up as Baphomet. She's sitting on the throne of Baphomet. She's got the horns. Later on, she's got the hand gestures of Baphomet. And this is the idol that the American people during Super Bowl halftime show are being told to worship. So who's Baphomet? Baphomet is an idol used by Satanists to represent the devil.
This also isn't the first time we've seen questionable symbolism from Beyonce. The pagan deity Baphomet, a figure revived in the 19th century as an idol for Satan worship, has been prominently featured in her videos and album artwork, and she even wears a Baphomet ring. And Beyonce isn't the only music star by far who's been called out for having hidden symbolism in her videos. The Yahoo article claims that Beyonce is merely supporting her husband's record label, but if this symbol is a diamond and not a pyramid, why are he, Beyonce, and other stars seen looking through it with one eye? In addition, let's analyze this shirt sold under Jay-Z's clothing label. It again depicts the pyramid hand symbol with the all-seeing eye atop it, and 13 rays of light coming out of the sides, encircled by a serpent and other smaller symbols with the tagline, Masters of the Craft, at the bottom. Jay-Z has also had some interesting critiques of hidden messages in his music as well.
Jay-Z, H to the Izzo, V to the Izzy, Jehovah God. That's what he calls himself. We just happened to come across a very disturbing song by Brother Jay-Z, and has a backwards message in it, and we had to reverse the song and play the song backwards. 666
Murder, murder, Jesus.
And the rapper has gone on record wondering why people have linked him to devil worship and the Illuminati. When asked by radio personality Angie Martinez if these rumors of deliberately adding images to his videos were true, Jay-Z responded, "No, never done that before. Why would I do that? That's retarded." But here's a clip of another interview where Jay-Z actually admits he hides messages in his music.
And then I start doing, these different, hidden messages in the music, just as that replaced, the technical aspect of it. And then it's just, evolved from there.
The Super Bowl aside, we've seen other curious eye symbolism at major events. At the one-year anniversary of 9/11, the band marched out onto Ground Zero in what appeared to be an all-seeing eye formation. Are all of these mere coincidences? Many people ask, if the Illuminati is such a super-secret cabal and they're so devious, why are they openly hiding their symbols in plain sight? In his book Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare, Michael Hoffman II calls this revelation of the method, or advertising one's power openly to amplify it, gloating and flaunting the idea that resistance is futile before an unsuspecting public. Are all of these established Illuminati symbols supposed to acclimate people subconsciously to a darker agenda, or are we really supposed to believe that all-seeing eyes and pyramids and Baphomet costumes are going to be the new theme for the Super Bowl every year? And what is the average person supposed to think about this continuous symbolism inundation? Or is the truth that they're not supposed to think at all, but just go along with their regularly scheduled programming? I mean, how many coincidences can you have before it's not a coincidence anymore? These are overt messages of elite domination by a covert group parading a pageant of mass conditioning before the public in a culture dominated by television at a sporting event watched by millions every year. And many do not even realize what's happening. If it doesn't mean anything, why is it there? For InfoWars Nightly News, I'm Melissa Melton.
And so again, that's a recap of yet again these strange occurrences happening at the halftime show at the Super Bowl. Madonna did her strange ritual last year. Beyonce blinged all these messages. And really, there should be no denial. They're clearly demonstrating Illuminati, Masonic, other occultic symbols. But the point is, why? Why would they do it if the public doesn't know what's going on? Well, they rule the public by demonstrating their dominance over them, by putting suggestive subliminal messages into our daily lives. Is it really going on? Well, ask yourself politically how we came to work against our own interests, to turn out over the power of our own lives to these politicians who give us phony pretexts, 9/11, the war on terror, phony WMD exploits, to take over our constitutional bounds and run over us. Meanwhile, we've submitted to this consumer culture. We've learned to believe in and buy in these celebrities. We watch these commercials where we relate to the little short messages they give us. And why not demonstrate some of the hardcore control symbols that they put into us? People don't know how to read anymore. You've got to remember, literacy has been an ongoing tens of thousands of years struggles. In old times, it was only kings and priest class who could read at all or afford books because they had to be transcribed by hand. The rise of the printing press changed that to a large extent, and many revolutionary tendencies were built on that principle. The whole Age of Enlightenment, the American Revolution, was on the backs of the printing press and people learning to read. You've got the regular text, that's the words, the things as you see them, but there's also subtext, the things between the lines, the things they're not saying, and there's also the context. What is surrounding it? What other events are happening at the time? That's the kind of analyzation we need to use. My literature teacher was actually pretty good in public schools, taught us how to read between the lines and see what authors and other things were really meaning. We analyzed 1984, and it's really played a big role in my awakening and one of the reasons I'm here. And so with that in mind, let's look at the Super Bowl. Melissa Melton, you joined us. You analyzed these things, why they display these ritualistic like symbols during the Super Bowl, during this mass event where everyone tunes into television, everyone watches this one performance.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have come out since I did this report, and they've actually said that if
it's just Jay-Z's record label. That's just his symbol for his record label, and we're making a big deal out of nothing. However, why would you pick something that's been historically linked to devil worship and the Illuminati? It's been around for a very long time. That's like if I went and got a record label and I decided to make the swastika my symbol and then got offended when people linked it to Nazis, you know? And I said, well, that's just a weird X. I don't know why you're thinking that about me. I mean, it's ridiculous. And actually, in analyzing it even further, we found the Pepsi commercial that they showed beforehand, the little intro into the Super Bowl, had some subliminal messages in it.
I didn't see it, but tell us what's in it.
We got a clip. Actually, we're going to play a clip.
Do we have that, guys?
So, right here. This was shown for maybe half a second.
And again, prisonplanet.tv viewers can see what's going on, but they're showing the Pepsi can. They're flashing through hundreds of people. They're showing sneakers. It's all very fast motion. And oh, there's devil horns
Girl
just in there,
devil horn sticking her
just for a
tongue out.
second, half a second.
And then the very next image after that is an eyeball. Just gigantic eyeball right there. All-seeing eye right there. I mean, why would they have that? Why do they need to have a girl flashing devil horns hidden in there, basically? I mean, you have to really slow it down to even notice that it's there.
Well, you've got a whole history of masonry, of the Illuminati, in relation to the power structure. People who want power or are at the pinnacle of power are brought into these societies. That's how they are given higher office. And then you've got the whole celebrity culture, Hollywood, who's learned to read these messages, learn that they're supposed to interject them in for the masses without the masses necessarily understanding what they're seeing, but they convey, especially the pyramid with the all-seeing eye, they convey top-down control that the masses are supposed to submit. And does it have an effect? Well, we see it every day in music videos and commercials. It's just that the Super Bowl is extra on display because it's a primary moment.
People.
104 million viewers.
They're saying watched Beyonce's 112 Madonna's, million people.
Yeah, Madonna. Okay, so I made the case on the nightly news the other night after they aired your report that it was the secret symbolism, hidden messages for top-down control. But could it really be considered a ritual? Is there really something satanic or hidden going on here? Well, let's hear what Madonna herself had to say about her Super Bowl performance last year.
Do you guys nervous about doing the Super Bowl? Oh my God, I'm so nervous. You have no idea. I am. Really? First of all, it's the Super Bowl. I mean, the Super Bowl is kind of like the Holy of Holies in America, right? So, like, here I am. I'm going to come into the halfway between, like, the church experience, and I'm going to have to deliver a sermon that's going to have to be very impactful.
So there again, I might even play that clip one more time just so we make sure the listeners are analyzing the words she's using. She sacrilegiously says the Super Bowl is like a holy of holies, says it's like a church event, and that she's going to give the sermon. And then you look, this was before the Super Bowl, look at what she did in her, quote, sermon at the Super Bowl. She displayed Baphomet. She did all these weird ritualistic things. Could it really be a ritual? Well, for her, it's a church. Let's play it one more time.
Are you nervous about doing the Super Bowl? Oh my God, I'm so nervous. You have no idea. I am. Really? Yeah. I mean, first of all, it's the Super Bowl. I mean, the Super Bowl is kind of like the Holy of Holies in America, right? So, like, here I am. I'm going to come into the halfway between, like, the church experience, and I'm going to have to deliver a sermon. It's going to have to be very impactful.
She's going to deliver a sermon.
Her Baphomet ritual was a sermon.
Exactly. And so if it doesn't matter, it doesn't necessarily matter if the people believe it or not. She obviously does.
And she's admittedly into Kabbalah and all kinds of other secret society
Gnosticism.
stuff. A lot of these people in entertainment are, and she's been propped up for decades as a major cultural icon. Everybody loves or hates her, but they know who she is.
Yeah, well, and so you've got this being paraded around in front of people, and even this year, it was more subtle this year, but there was still a lot of symbolism and bizarre things throughout Beyonce's performance. And then we also have a clip of people in the crowd mirroring her symbols back to her and making devil horns and making triangle, pyramid things. And so it has an effect, obviously. Obviously it does. Obviously it's brainwashing people whether they realize it is or not.
And whether these things are ultimately meaningful or not is yours to discover and decide, but it's in all the mass media we're watching every day. People, you really shouldn't be watching television more than maybe a couple minutes to catch maybe a major news story. It's not just entertainment. It is, quote, programming, and they really have changed our society with it. They've shown it contributes to declining sperm counts. It contributes to this people in an alpha state who lose touch with their regular consciousness, follow the leader, do what they're told, and really aren't engaged in society. It's destructive in so many forms, and there's just so much of the symbolism going on. Your comments, take us out to break, and we'll come back with a little bit more.
Well, obviously, Yahoo.com had that as their main top story for the day. Did Beyonce flash an Illuminati sign? So, and the reason is so many people came out and said that she did. Obviously, they think it's an issue enough to make it the main top story for the day. So if it doesn't mean anything, why is it there?
ProPure is introducing Pro One. All of your filtration in one system, portable, on the go. This is the Pro One by ProPure. You wanted it, you got it. No more do you have 2 or 3 filters to just reduce sodium fluoride. You have a system that cuts out the sodium fluoride and up to 95% of hydrofluorosilicic acid. Advanced manufacturing technology combines silver-impregnated white ceramic with new Aquamedics advanced media for removal of fluoride and other heavy metals, all in one filter element. It cuts out the acid derivative of fluoride. It is the only one that does it, and out of the gates, we have it discounted at 10% off with promo code WATER. This is the only system that in one unit helps reduce or remove pesticides, herbicides, chloramines, ammonia, and chlorine, hydrofluorosilicic acid, the most common form of fluoride not covered by other fluoride filter brands, and sodium hexafluorosilicate. This is a revolution against the tyrants. They love putting the toxic acid base of fluoride into your water. They love the fact that it's an adjuvant supercharging the trace Prozac in the water and the hormones and the other chemicals. By cutting out fluoride, you cut out the turbocharger in all the poison being artificially introduced into your body. This is what I use. It's a win-win. You get a high-quality product at the lowest price. You support the InfoWar. Get your ProPure with the new Pro One filters today at InfoWarsStore.com or by calling 888-253-3139.
Anyway, we go back to Melissa Melton with more of the symbolism we saw on display, on exhibit at the Super Bowl.
Well, I mean, she's dancing around inside of a red circle that looks like an eye. She's dancing around in a ring of flames. She's flashing these pyramid symbols. I mean, nothing about that seems wholesome or good. I mean, and then you've got the lights going out. That was another issue that people brought up. I didn't have time to cover everything in a small special report, but the lights did go out about 10 minutes after her performance, I think it was. And they stayed out for 33 minutes and some seconds. And say what you want, but 33 is the highest known degree of Freemasonry. And we know it's on record that Adam Weishaupt, who founded the Illuminati, did infiltrate the Masons. And so I actually have a quote here that I think is pretty interesting about that by writer Peter Farley. He says, "Masonry never works in the full light of day. Everyone knows of its existence, its meeting places, and of many of its adepts, but one is ignorant of its real aims, its real means, its real leaders. The immense majority of Masons themselves are in that position. They are only the blind machinery of the sect which they serve. Many honest Masons are so blind that they would be stupefied if they knew for what they are being used."
Yeah,
so,
and so they talk about how Masonry is not all bad. A lot of its membership are well-meaning, but again, it's a secret society with hierarchical ranking, and just like the military or just like in the White House, it's on a need-to-know basis. So you've got a lot of people blindly in that system, assuming it's doing good work, they do charity, etc., not knowing what's really going on. And you mentioned Adam Weishaupt. I've read books on this. I went to the founding place of the Illuminati over in Germany, and Weishaupt took his Illuminati Illuminati society. They infiltrated the ranks of Masonry, took over many of the lodges, and got their ranks instituted in there. And John Bound was showing me behind the scenes, the old all-seeing eye pyramid logo used to have the fairly innocent slogan, De Favente Perennis, which translates to with God's favor. But over the years,
the ages.
But now it's Novus Seclorum Ordum, New Order of the Ages. Excuse me, I said it wrong. Novus Ordo Seclorum, New Order of the Ages, New World Order. And you see that with people like Francis Bacon and more. But let's get back to the Super Bowl and what kind of stuff they had on display.
Well, actually, we just found this out, too. There was actually an ad during the Super Bowl for Mercedes-Benz where Willem Dafoe actually plays the devil, and a young man is offered a deal with the devil where he can receive a new Mercedes-Benz.
You get a cool car, you just have to sell your soul.
You just have to sell your soul, and they actually have him signing a contract at the end, but it flashes to a ring that he's wearing, that Willem Dafoe is wearing, that has a Mason symbol on it, Freemason symbol. So it's...
And these commercials, I didn't see it, but these don't happen by accidents. They spend millions of dollars producing them and millions upon millions for that prime airtime when there's maximum viewers.
$4 million for 30 seconds this year.
Wow, so more than ever. So
every single thing they put in one of these commercials is meaningful. If you're going to spend $4 million on 30 seconds, every second.
This isn't stuff slipping by.
Something. No, it's not an accident that this is in there. That we have. It says there's a satanic spirit in here. I'm looking at this breakdown. I mean, I just received this a minute ago. There's an all-seeing eye at the end, too. Once again, more eye symbolism. And actually, eye symbolism's been around in the Super Bowl halftime show even before Madonna. I have a clip in there of the Black Eyed Peas, an image of that. It's all these people raising their hands up in a circled in an eye.
It's creepy stuff. It's all on display. You know, blogs like Vigilant Citizen break down a lot of the behind the scenes, what these symbols mean. But you can do it for yourself just by learning to read text, subtext, and context.
Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.